Capitol Hill, FBI Director Christopher Wray, DOJ Inspector General Michael Horowitz gearing up to testify publicly before the Senate Judiciary Committee this afternoon. This all coming on the heels of Horowitz's bombshell IG report on the Bureau's handling of the Hillary Clinton email case. You're watching Outnumbered. I'm Harris Faulkner. Here today, host of After the Bell on Fox Business, Melissa Francis, Republican strategist and senior fellow for the Independent Women's Voice. I get a little accent there, a little British accent there. Lisa Booth is in the house, host of Kennedy on Fox Business Kennedy. And in the center seat, former Utah Congressman and Fox News contributor Jason Chaffetz. Outnumbered. Great to have you.
Glad to be back. Fired up. Lots to talk about.
Happy Father's Day to you.
Father's Day week.
I know. Because you have a new grandbaby,
We
right?
got to change the setting, fellas. I'm telling you.
I think you should go for a month. Why not?
Yeah.
If you're going to go for a week, take it to a month.
First
Let's
grandbaby?
get to a week first.
Yeah.
I mean, yes.
Okay.
Grandpa. Can you believe
Well, in addition, then, all week long, happy Father's Day.
Well, thank you.
All right, let's get to the news. Roughly 2 hours from now until the highly anticipated hearing with FBI Director Christopher Wray and DOJ Inspector General Michael Horowitz going before the Senate Judiciary Committee. And now President Trump's attorney, Rudy Giuliani, is calling for an investigation into the origins of Special Counsel Robert Mueller's Russia investigation. This is after the IG's report revealed even more anti-Trump text messages between FBI officials Peter Strzok and Lisa Page. Giuliani says Strzok's involvement with Mueller's investigation warrants further review. Watch.
He was with it for its first couple of months. Mueller kept him on. So how much did he infect that probe with his own very, very extreme positions? I don't know, but I sure want to find out before I go forward. I mean, this is a case where it's crying out for someone to investigate the investigators. There should be a full and complete IG report and grand jury investigation of what happened here after it became the Russia probe. What was the purpose of it? What did they gather? I would really like to know what they gathered, because I think they will have gathered the same things that the Washington Post desperately is trying to regurgitate, which is no collusion by the president with any Russians. All these things were dead ends.
And President Trump tweeted this yesterday. Witch hunt. There was no Russia collusion. Oh, I see. There was no Russia collusion, so now they look for obstruction on the no Russia collusion. The phony Russian collusion was a made-up hoax. Too bad they didn't look at crooked Hillary like this. Double standard, exclamation point. Congressman, what say you?
Well, the Inspector General, with his 562 pages, basically showed the animus and the bias that was going on at the senior echelon of the FBI. There was no serious investigation of Hillary Clinton or emails. There was no way they were going to prosecute her, and I think that comes screaming out of it. But Rudy Giuliani is right. Remember, there's two aspects to this. Number one is the look at the probe into the Hillary Clinton emails. But that same cast of characters comes over and is involved in the FISA abuse and the Russia allegations. So that's where the investigators are looking. That's why Devin Nunes and John Radcliffe and Trey Gowdy, that's why they want to see these underlying documents.
Can I ask you just a quick follow-up, because it was something that was happening last week. Some Republicans were saying that this report had no teeth in it and that it had been scrubbed. You can't have both ways, right?
No, look, this is as damning as it's ever going to get. Remember, there were also referrals. So a inspector general can't prosecute somebody. Neither can Congress. And so they have to refer that. There were a number of referrals. Some people you've never heard their names yet. In fact, I think one of the things that'll come out of either the Senate or the House will be the names of some new people that you haven't heard who had some of the most unbelievable texts.
Oh, they were incendiary texts.
But they have to go through the Office of Professional Responsibility and to a prosecutor.
So, Kennedy, I do want to ask you about this further scoop. And they call them Agent 1 through 5 in the report, right? So we don't know exactly who they are.
A lot of tears.
But we do know what they text. And what they were text messaging about, in part, was the people who supported this president, calling them things like, quote unquote, retarded.
Yes. No, they used some pretty explicit language, the kind of stuff that, you know, maybe you have these private conversations, but these are work phones. And, you know, any of that information can be accessed, as Michael Horowitz showed, because he was the one who stumbled upon the Strzok and Page texts. And I think it was naive for everyone to believe that Page and Strzok were the only two people in the FBI who were exchanging enforcing, this kind of bias. And we've talked about it a lot. A lot of people have bias. Everyone does. But the question is whether or not it affects what you do. And with Strzok and Page, there may have been a lot of people in this country working in various levels of government who didn't like President Trump, but they couldn't soften language here and they couldn't press an investigation over there. Unlike these people, there is so much to answer for. And to your point about transparency, I don't want to see it in just some convenient documents for Trey Gowdy and Devin Nunes.
Right.
I want to see it across the board.
Everywhere.
And I want to know how that happens. Do we have to have more power
What
back
are the
in the
checks
legislative
and balances
branch?
on this as it's happening? I mean, we know that James Comey, punished or had some sort of punishment, I guess you could say, for Strzok and Page, although they still had jobs.
Why
for some
didn't they lose
period
their
after.
security clearances?
Exactly. And I know Senator Rand Paul was trying to chase down how long they had it and how broad those clearances were, not even 2 months ago. I mean,
Right.
it hasn't even been that long ago. But Lisa, I want to ask you about this situation where, and I understand where it came from, Kennedy, because you didn't want to, taint the entire force of FBI, right? So you kept hearing people at higher echelon saying, well, it was just these two. Well, apparently it wasn't just these two.
Right. It wasn't, based off of the text messages that we saw in the IG report. But it's not just the clear bias that we're seeing in those text messages. What I am deeply concerned with is the quote in regard to Peter Strzok, the willingness to take official action to impact the presidential candidates' electoral prospects. And so that is what I'm largely concerned about. And that's what I hope senators on the Senate Judiciary Committee today drill in on with Michael Horowitz as he testifies before them. And for Christopher Wray, I want to know, is there going to be any accountability taken for those 5 agents who have now been recommended for further investigation?
Did you think that he took any responsibility with that press conference?
No, I didn't. And I think he should have done more. And that's what I really hope that they drill in on today. And also I want to know more about the unprecedented actions of the FBI.
You want Christopher Wray to weigh in heavier on which part of it? I mean, he hasn't been there for all of it.
Well, I want to know if there's going to be any, but he is now the head of the FBI,
Absolutely.
so he has to answer for it.
And the president says he's the man to clean it all up. I want to bring in Melissa
Sure.
just real quickly here.
What disturbs me the most is not how they're talking about the president, but how they're talking about a huge group of Americans who supposedly they're supposed to be safeguarding law and order for. And if they have this kind of open disdain for a huge group of Americans, they lump them all together, everybody who voted for Trump.
And
they
call
had
them
low
names.
middle income, POS, like all this stuff that they put in there. They're supposed to be safeguarding their law and order, and they don't respect them. I wouldn't trust them to enforce the law for or around this group of people that they clearly just degrade as a whole.
So we've talked about the upper echelons of both the DOJ and the FBI, and some of what you're talking about is looking broader at, well, if there were more people, how does that affect how they treat the supporters of the president, so on and so forth? How deep do you see this going? I mean, there have been some thoughts that people will lose their jobs.
Think about it this way. I mean, what if you had the New York Police Department, for example, and they discovered texts where they were talking about a group of people in this way? Can you imagine the outrage?
Right.
Can you imagine how they would say, how can you possibly take care of and enforce the law around and be fair to this group of people when you talk about them like that?
That's the central argument when you talk about criminal justice reform. And that's why when you're on the other side of that and you feel like you are being targeted, like many minority communities, and it feels like you don't have a voice.
That's a great example.
We keep concentrating more power within these agencies like the FBI.
So you point to the very nugget of the situation that I always like to talk about with you, Congressman, and that is diversity, whether it's diversity of skin color, gender, or thought. Last words?
Peter Strzok, who was engaged in these text messages, he was not in charge of Fish and Wildlife. He was in charge of counterintelligence for the Federal Bureau of Investigation. It doesn't get any more serious than that.
So, and as Kennedy was saying, if they discriminate or think against one group, no matter what the box you check, it's problematic for everybody. All right, we'll move on. President Trump is getting a glowing review on economic growth from an unlikely source. Who is arguing the issue will keep the commander-in-chief in the White House come 2020, and whether that person is right? We'll talk about it. And growing controversy surrounding the Trump administration's zero-tolerance immigration policy. Which political party is actually to blame for the fallout? Can Congress pass a bill the president will support on immigration?
Where's the outcry for the permanent separation in this country for American families? When people come to this country illegally and American citizens are forced to bury a loved one, Democrats don't come anywhere near that conversation. All they want to do is go down and grandstand and try to use this to political gain to try and get reelected in a few years, and it's grotesque.
To discuss potential options for funding the president's long-promised border wall as Congress tries to hammer out a bill that the president will sign. This amid growing controversy over the administration's zero-tolerance immigration policy that separates illegal immigrant families at the border. President Trump tweeting this morning, quote, "Why don't the Democrats give us the votes to fix the world's worst immigration laws? Where is the outcry for the killings and crime being caused by gangs and thugs, including MS-13, coming into our country illegally?" And Homeland Security Secretary Kirstjen Nielsen had this to say earlier today. Watch.
There has been much outcry, consternation, and frankly misinformation from many in the press, in Congress, and advocacy groups over the last few weeks that we at DHS are intentionally doing things that are unhumanitarian, that are cruel, immoral, and disgraceful. We are doing none of those things. We are enforcing the laws passed by Congress, and we are doing all that we can in the executive branch to protect our communities. It is now time that Congress asks to fix our broken immigration system.
Meanwhile, a group of congressional Democrats traveling to the nation's southern border today to tour a facility housing undocumented immigrant children after a separate group inspected a detention center housing parents in New Jersey just yesterday. Democrat Bill Pascrell speaking out this morning.
We feel very strongly about this, and I want to reverse, Micah, the term that they've used, and that is zero tolerance. We have zero tolerance for this. I want you to know, the 7 of us who were there, zero tolerance. We're going to use that term over and over again. We cannot allow this to go on. The president has to step up to the plate. He's got to do his job for change.
Mike Emanuel is live on Capitol Hill with the latest. Mike.
Melissa, good afternoon. President Trump continues venting his frustration, writing on Twitter, "It is the Democrats' fault for being weak and ineffective with border security and crime. Tell them to start thinking about the people devastated by crime coming from illegal immigration. Change the laws." His Attorney General, Jeff Sessions, weighed in a short time ago.
We do not want to separate children from their parents. We do not want adults to bring children into this country unlawfully either.
First Lady Melania Trump's office put out a statement over the weekend. It says, quote, "Mrs. Trump hates to see children separated from their families and hopes both sides of the aisle can finally come together to achieve successful immigration reform. She believes we need to be a country that follows all laws, but also a country that governs with heart." And former First Lady Laura Bush wrote an op-ed in the Washington Post saying, quote, "I live in a border state. I appreciate the need to enforce and protect our international boundaries, but the zero tolerance policy is cruel, it is immoral, and it breaks my heart." Some Democrat lawmakers went to a detention facility in New Jersey to draw attention to this issue.
Today, Father's Day, we spoke to fathers whose children have been ripped from their arms, who have no idea when or if they will see their children again.
It is a policy that is unacceptable, unjust, un-American, and unconscionable.
The Department of Health and Human Services released this video in an effort to show people are being held.
All right, this is the President of the United States in the East Room. He's talking about immigration. We'll tell you what this event is after. Let's watch.
I say it's very strongly the Democrats' fault. They're they're really obstructionist, and they are obstructing. The United States will not be a migrant camp, and it will not be a refugee holding facility. Won't be. You look at what's happening in Europe, you look at what's happening in other places. We can't allow that to happen to the United States, not on my watch. For the rest of the world, you look at everything that's taking place. Pick up your newspapers this morning, and you see. We want safety and we want security for our country. If the Democrats would sit down instead of obstructing, we could have something done very quickly. Good for the children, good for the country, good for the world. It could take place quickly. We could have an immigration bill We could have child separation. We're stuck with these horrible laws. They're horrible laws. What's happening is so sad, and it can be taken care of quickly, beautifully, and we'll have safety. This could really be something very special. It could be something maybe even for the world to watch, just like they're watching our great economy, how it's soaring. They could watch this. We have the worst immigration laws in the entire world. Nobody has such sad, such bad, and actually in many cases, such horrible and tough. You see about child separation. You see what's going on there. But just remember, a country without borders is not a country at all. We need borders. We need security. We need safety. We have to take care of our people. You take a look at the death and destruction that's been caused by people coming into this country without going through a process. We want a merit-based immigration system so that Boeing and Lockheed and all of the people, Grumman, all of the people that are here today, the heads of every company, so that you can hire people on a merit base. You know they're coming in. They're people that came on merit, not based on a lottery or not people that snuck across the border. And they could be murderers and thieves and so much else. So we want a safe country, and it starts with the borders, and that's the way it is. Now I'd like to, thank you. Thank you. And again, we can do this very quickly if the Democrats come to the table. Everybody wants to do it. We want to do it more than they do. If they come to the table, instead of playing politics, we can do it very, very quickly. So welcome to the third meeting of the National Space Council. I want to begin by recognizing our great Vice President, Mike Pence, who's been so involved. And Mike, I want to thank you for the incredible commitment to American leadership in space.
All right, so you just heard the president talking about the fact that he's getting ready to deliver the keynote address at the National Space Council meeting. Moon, Mars, and Worlds Beyond Winning the Next Frontier. They are live in the East Room. And we had known about this event, anticipated it. They have panels for the rest of the day on science and exploration. But where the president started with his remarks today is where the country is right now in terms of news. And here's the news that the president of the United States just made on the issue of immigration and the very incendiary issue of the families being separated at the border, the southern border of this country. He said, we want Democrats to come to the table. We want this perhaps more than they do. He says, talking about the separation of families at the border, Congress could reach a solution quickly, beautifully, and with safety in mind. It would be good for children, the country, and the world. The president of the United States talking about what needs to get done very fast on immigration. Congressman, what about his remarks tells you that we are moving forward or not moving at all?
Well, over the last 24 hours, I think we've had a very convoluted message coming out of the White House. I believe the president when he says what he says, but you hear the other senior members of the administration, everything from we don't do that to yes, we have a zero tolerance of it to hey, we got to fix it. So, I mean, we've had the whole full spectrum. I think Republicans ought to take the mantle of fixing legal immigration. We legally and lawfully bring 1 million people into this country. But the problem is when you have people that try to cross that border, hey, make the case that we need a border wall and do what you're supposed to do.
But it's so frustrating to hear all of the finger pointing, and there is blame for everybody who's been involved. I'm sorry, Jason. I mean, every politician who is in office now has been in the past, Democrat, Republican, whatever. There is plenty of blame to go around, and it is infuriating to hear them try and message the right thing from the White House when they're doing a terrible job. Democrats are doing a terrible job. Republicans are doing a terrible job. So with all this pressure, everybody sit down and get something done. This situation is unacceptable.
So Kennedy, what's interesting about this whole thing in terms of the president calling on Democrats to come to the table, you have two Republican bills that are making their way through Congress right now, one more conservative than the other. This has also been a battle within the Republican Party.
It absolutely has, and it just shows how emotional and difficult this is, especially when you try and do something comprehensively all at once. And there is the argument that you do one thing at a time and build consensus for each issue. You can speak to that much more eloquently than I ever could, having, been in that seat of power. But the Republicans are losing on this issue, and the president is as well. You look at what happened in North Korea last week, and Democrats will do whatever they can to move that off the front page. And they finally found an issue where they have traction because this resonates, regardless of what party you're in. People don't want to see parents separated from kids.
No doubt.
And Democrats are absolutely feasting on that message. And the White House has to figure out what their message is and stick to it.
But they're also full of it. I mean, Senator Dianne Feinstein, when she was on State of the Union on CNN, directly asked about that viral photo that went around in 2014 of showing children in, holding cells or whatever you want to call it.
They were cages, just say it.
In cages.
Let's talk about stuff for what it is.
She said she didn't pay attention to it then. All of a sudden now she's paying attention to it under the Trump administration. There's a lot of Democrats out there that are making a lot of noise that are a bunch of hypocrites.
Where were they in 2014?
Exactly.
I'm seeing everybody from Oprah to all these celebrities, and I love Oprah, don't get me wrong. I was sad I didn't get a car. I was in the audience one day. I'm joking. But my point with all of this is, where were all these people when this was happening originally?
Crappy
the
Obamacare.
Policies that gave us what we see as visuals today from 2014 pictures. Where were all these people?
I would say
Twitter
a lot of them,
existed.
I would say a lot of them didn't care until it became an issue to hit President Trump and the Trump administration.
Okay, so now
over the
we
head
all care. Now we all care, and everybody feels the pressure. So sit down and don't leave the room until you get something done.
Okay, but when you say you're going to enforce the law, we're trying to get rid of the rewards and incentives for people to take the risk. They should be doing is going to their country of origin and going to the United States Embassy. They shouldn't be crossing all the way through Mexico and putting
Absolutely,
a family
we need
in risk.
to reform the entire system.
Put up a wall, lock down the...
I want to ask the congressman this question. So the president just moments ago said, this won't be a refugee holding facility. We will not have what they have in Europe on my watch.
That's why the president's trying to build the wall.
So what do we do with the children who are already here?
Well, those are very difficult questions.
That's only one question.
First of all, you got to vet them. Don't be so naive to think that everybody.
How do you vet a child?
Because you've got to make sure that the person
Kennedy
coming
is
across.
laughing. Kennedy,
man, I'm sure these mini rapists all have bombs strapped to their chest.
No.
Okay,
absolutely.
We're demonizing the wrong people. It becomes so illogical.
You are so naive. I can't believe it.
I am far from naive when it comes to this.
There
but
is
I'm also
so much human trafficking coming across there.
Okay, that's fine. Then you were in Congress for so long, you didn't fix the system either. Democrats can't do it. Republicans can't do it. And now we're strapped with this mess.
Okay,
and the worst possible outcome is the metric, the visual of parents separated from kids.
More than
That is wrong.
100,000 kids have been caught. No, it's not fine. More than 100,000 came across the way.
But
you have
no one
to
has
vet
the
them.
courage to fix it. What does that even mean, vet them?
But we're also
not. You have to understand if they're actually the child of the person that's coming across.
Okay, what does that mean? Doesn't that require
You don't think
policy?
that they're bringing drug mules across that are 14 years old?
Okay,
you have to understand who they are first.
Here's the thing as well.
The government has not proven that they're good at vetting. They have not put a policy into place yet.
But if you ought to say amen to that, because that's true, because that's been a problem we've had for a very long time, trying to figure out who's coming here, and even knowing how many we have. Lisa, your head is going to explode. Please speak.
Because it's so frustrating sometimes. I feel like we can't have rational debates in this country anymore. Like, people are so blinded by their hatred for President Trump. I mean, look at the fact
we're hating the people on the other side.
Exactly. I mean, look, if you are crossing the border illegally as a single individual or a family unit, you are still breaking the law. And that is the point of this. And I think the point of the Trump administration policy, are they implementing it perfectly, or is their messaging perfect? Absolutely not. But the point is, if you are crossing the border illegally, you are breaking the law as a family unit or as an individual. And we also know it's been reported that they are some individuals are intentionally coming as a family unit because they believe that they will be more easily released into the
But not
United
all.
States.
And we saw 90,000 unaccompanied minors come across the border just 3 years ago, just 3 summers ago. I want to give you the last word on that.
There is so much pressure on this issue right now, and I hope that the pressure and the focus doesn't go away because everybody has something they want, and it's the perfect time to get together and make a deal where there's something for everyone and something everyone hates. Get it done.
All right, we've got a deal maker. We'll see what happens. We're awaiting a Senate panel hearing on the Justice Department's IG report, which exposed more anti-Trump text messages between FBI officials, including the original 2. Peter Strzok and Lisa Page, during the Clinton email investigation and run-up to the Trump-Russia probe. Now, Peter Strzok says he wants to testify. Michael Horowitz are set to testify. It's all about that IG's report on the Clinton email investigation. Did she get special treatment? Was there bias inside the FBI? It details anti-Trump text messages among FBI officials Peter Strzok and Lisa Page, who were overseeing the Clinton probe and the startup of the Trump-Russia probe. In August of 2016, Page wrote, texted, Trump's not ever going to become president, right? Right? Strzok replied, no, he won't. We'll stop it. Wow. Now Strzok's attorney says his client is ready to open up to testifying, saying Strzok thinks that his position, character, and actions have all been misrepresented and caricatured, and he wants an opportunity to remedy that. House Judiciary Chairman Bob Goodlatte says Strzok will not testify at their hearing tomorrow, but he expects to see him soon.
We're going to have a lot of questions for Peter Strzok, but one of the lead ones is going to be, with that kind of animus toward Donald Trump, with that kind of bias, with that kind of support for Hillary Clinton, why did you allow yourself to be involved in either one of these high-profile investigations of presidential candidates and presidential campaigns? It terribly tarnished the reputation of America's leading law enforcement organization.
President Trump tweeted this: why was the FBI's sick loser, Peter Strzok, working on the totally discredited Mueller team of 13 angry and conflicted Democrats when Strzok was giving crooked Hillary a free pass, yet telling his lawyer, Lisa Page, that we'll stop Trump from becoming president? Witch hunt. And in quotes, the highest level of bias I've ever witnessed in any law enforcement officer, end quote. Trey Gowdy on FBI's own Peter Strzok also remember that they all worked for slippery James Comey and that Comey is best friends with Robert Mueller. A really sick deal, isn't it? Writing directly to your friend, Trey Gowdy.
Trey Gowdy's right on almost all of this stuff, and he's been able to look at things real closely. But look, Peter Strzok has a lot that Congress wants answered. For months, the FBI and Peter Strzok would not allow him to come to Capitol Hill. Now that this is being exposed, now that there's an actual IG report, suddenly he does want to come testify before Congress. I'd be fascinated to hear what he has to say, and they should absolutely listen.
He should text message his answers in.
I mean, wouldn't you love to hear the man behind the text messages? I mean, we've never heard him speak that I know of. And having read all of these messages, what would be the first question that you would ask him, Jason?
I think I'd ask him about why he would think that 100 million people should vote for Hillary Clinton. And there isn't a single person that he knows of that would ever vote for Donald Trump. How is it that that mindset would allow him to do his job as the head of counterintelligence for the Federal Bureau of Investigation?
I want to bring up just one other point in all of this. These two people weren't just anybody at the FBI. They were working on a presidential candidate in Hillary Clinton, her email scandal, somebody that clearly they easily could have known maybe over the years. And so they're going back and forth some 10,000 times, Lisa.
Well, and what Trey Gowdy laid out in his statement after the IG report was also saying he's concerned about the fact that you had many of the same supervisors and investigators with the Hillary Clinton investigation versus the Trump investigation, yet the tactics and the way that they treated both groups were so entirely different. So I hope that the Senate Judiciary Committee gets into that today as well. But I don't care to hear from Peter Strzok, to be honest.
Really?
The only thing I want to
don't? I want to know how a man who was working on that investigation had time to go back and forth 10,000 times in text with anybody who was not actually part of the investigation.
The only thing I want to see from him is fired. I don't care what he has to say. I think the text messages speak for themselves.
No,
the IG report speaks
because what
for
if he
itself,
was
and I just
talking to
wanna see
other
him
people?
fired.
What if the circle widens? I think we do need to know.
No, and there's some really important questions. He obviously had very strong opinions about the Hillary Clinton investigation, and then, was essentially the impetus for starting the Russia investigation and the investigation into President Trump's election team. So I want to know about that intersection and why he felt he was such an important person that, one was given much more gravity than the other. But by his own admission in his text, he said that the Russia investigation was going to lead nowhere. So if he really thought that, and I also want to know about.
So how are they going to stop him? That's what I want to know.
But I want to know
their
about
master plan,
him softening that language in that James Comey memo, going from gross negligence to extreme carelessness.
That's what I want to know. That's what I would ask him is, what did you mean? What was your plan? What was that all about? Right?
Yeah, how are
that
you
would
gonna
be my number one question.
All right, we'll move on. House Republicans have run out of patience. House Oversight Chair Trey Gowdy warning there will be action on the floor this week if DOJ officials fail to comply with a subpoena for documents on investigations during the 2016.
Back to Outnumbered, top House lawmakers stepping up their battle with the Justice Department amid their push to get officials to comply with the subpoena for documents on investigations during the 2016 election. Now, House Oversight Chairman Trey Gowdy says lawmakers are pursuing imminent action, including possible contempt charges against Deputy AG Rod Rosenstein. Watch.
There's going to be action on the floor of the House this week if the FBI and DOJ do not comply with our subpoena request. So, Rod Rosenstein, Chris Wray, you were in the meeting. You understood him just as clearly as I did. We're going to get compliance, or the House of Representatives is going to use its full arsenal of constitutional weapons to gain compliance.
And House Intel Chair Devin Nunes yesterday sounding even more fed up with documents not being turned over.
If documents do not begin to be turned over tomorrow, and a clear way and path forward for everything else is not clear here in the next couple days, there's going to be hell to pay by Wednesday morning, because we can no longer, it's not just about the committee chairman any longer.
All right, so what happens Wednesday morning?
Look, duly issued subpoenas by the United States Congress, and you have the director of the FBI going up to Capitol Hill Monday in the Senate, Tuesday in the House. And if there isn't document production going to the Intel Committee, then I think there are two constitutional remedies. One is contempt. The other, more serious, is to impeach either the deputy director, the director of the FBI, Rod Rosenstein, and even the attorney general. None of them are off the table. These people will provide documents reluctantly, very reluctantly, to the inspector general. I think what you're going to hear testimony, you haven't really heard it publicly, but I think you're going to hear testimony that they were holding back documents from the inspector general, who is also supposed to be able to see these types of documents. But why should we, as an oversight community, have to wait months and months and months to be able to see
but if they
documents?
impeach, then it just becomes that they're trying to impede the Mueller investigation. I mean, what's a remedy that gets
Because I think
the
we're
actual
smarter
documents?
in this country. This is where Democrats are so short-sighted. At some point, they're going to want to see Trump documents. And they are nowhere to be found in this. They should be joining to say, yes, we do get to see these types of documents.
Yeah, and I hear you saying that, but that doesn't really answer Melissa's question. The question is, how do you actually get the documents? It isn't to say, well, when it's your turn, we're not going to give you what you want. It is to actually get the documents. So how do you do it?
Can't you go over
what about
with law
contempt of
enforcement or
Congress?
something
Does that
and
bring
get
them?
it? There has to be something.
Congress has been notoriously wimpy on this topic. We held, for the first time ever in the history of the United States of America, we held Eric Holder.
Wimpy and Congress are not two things.
Yes,
No,
but
they're one and
the
the same.
difference is the Department of Justice wasn't going to pursue that order because they were protecting Eric Holder. And to Harris's point and Melissa's point, this has to change. This has to change. This back and forth, and we're protecting our side, and you want to make sure you get reelected, and it all turns into this grandstanding where not only do the overseers not get clarity, the American people that you represent don't get clarity, and that means there has to be a systematic change. How do you do that?
And we don't actually fix it. So I'm writing a book. It's about the deep state, and it's coming out in September, and I'll make sure and get you a copy.
But we need the documents tomorrow.
No doubt. Congress used to actually be able to enforce this. If people were held in contempt of Congress, Congress
Why can't
would
they
enforce
now?
it. Congress needs it because they stopped doing that in their early.
But is it
1900s.
difficult because the DOJ is run by Republicans right now? I mean,
can't they put them under house arrest like Barry Bonds?
Is there a discomfort because it's inter-party?
No, it's more the deep state.
Or
Look,
intra-party?
the only way that Congress can get its subpoena fully enforced is through the Department of Justice.
All right, but they're
protected.
Let's bring Lisa in. Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, I assume we're going to hear more voices from the Republican Party and growing concerns, one, after the IG report, two, after the hearings this week, and also just the mere fact you look at the IG report and there was text messages that were never given to Congress in that report. I mean, so things like that are just going to spur aggression from Congress and trying to get these documents and get some of the answers
that
here.
Most egregious one that we saw, where they're going to stop the president, that originally given to Congress, that was redacted. It wasn't because it was classified. It wasn't because it was national security. It was because it's embarrassing.
Can you physically hold someone until they turn over the documents? I mean, this is what's so frustrating. Can't you hold them if they refuse to do it?
They should.
Keep them
That's
captive.
what Congress
Don't let them
used
go
to
home.
do. That's what Congress used to do.
Well, we will hold you very tightly. Yeah, President Trump getting credit for the booming economy from a surprising source. The unlikely media ally suggesting this virtually guarantees his re-election. That's next.
The economy's doing better. There are more jobs. And I just don't know how that gets defeated.
If you're like thousands of veterans who own a home, you may be thinking about refinancing to get money for your family. As a veteran, you're eligible to apply for a refinance loan for up to 100% of your home's value. The New Day 100